Rhizosorb is redefining what growers expect from phosphate fertilizer. Backed by data and built for performance, Rhizosorb helps reduce phosphorus losses, improve uptake, and boost ROI without increasing input costs. Join the next wave of growers switching to the next generation of phosphorus fertilizers by visiting phospholutions.com.
Let's talk about some things that are going on in the world of genetics in the beef industry. Joining us right now is Dr. Cara Wells. Her company is Emgenisys. How are we doing today, Dr. Wells?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. And, I get to run into lots of cool people with cool ideas and innovations they're bringing to the marketplace as I'm on the road throughout the year. And I heard you give a presentation at the International Livestock Congress, the Calgary Stampede there at the BMO Center. Very cool as you participated in one of the panels. I guess let's start off. What's Emgenisys?
Great question. So, Emgenesis is a software company evaluating embryo health in livestock based on real-time video. So, a little background for that. My background is as a reproductive physiologist. I've spent my career working in IVF and embryo transfer laboratories, and I realized that IVF offers a lot of potential to accelerate genetic progress, but the state of reality is that it's very expensive and pregnancy outcomes are low. A contributing factor to this problem is that the way that we evaluate embryos hasn't changed in over 50 years. It's just based on a human looking at them under a microscope. And as a result, we unintentionally transfer dead embryos into recipient animals every day. So, Emgenesis is harnessing the power of computer vision and artificial intelligence to analyze real-time videos of these embryos, analyze them frame by frame, and with that, we can see their hidden signs of life and pick which embryos are strong, healthy, and have a high likelihood of making a pregnancy.
And maybe it's a really dumb question, but I will ask it on behalf of all of us in the audience that aren't in this space on a daily basis. How do we know that by vision of the computer?
So, embryos, they look like static groups of cells if you're looking at them under a microscope, but we know that if the embryo is alive, it needs to be actively developing, which means these cells need to be dividing, they need to be differentiating, they need to be migrating, and these changes happen relatively quickly as the embryo has to go from a Welton cell organism to a calf in the span of about 9 months, but it's not something that the human eye and brain can perceive in real time. So when we take a short video of these embryos, we can use different graphic image processing techniques to quantify the activity captured in the video frame by frame, and then pair that with machine learning to look at the activity patterns embedded in that video data of those that are known to correlate with healthy embryos that survive to term and those that never make pregnancies. So,
Oh.
basically analyzing what the human eye and brain cannot see.
So fascinating. So as with the advent of this technology and the software that you're providing, what's the change in the success rate here? What's the delta between how we were doing it before to where we are today?
So, my research and the literature shows that about 20% of all transferred embryos are actually dead or dying at time of transfer. So, just by identifying that 20% and eliminating those, pregnancy outcomes improve by about 20%. But our assessment, it's not binary. It's not binary. We don't say the embryo is good or bad. We give it a score of 0 to 100, and there is a scenario here where we can select just the highest grade embryos and get a 80% pregnancy outcome consistently every single time if we have a high threshold for only selecting the best and discarding anything below that. So it's really how the user wants to use this objective data to manage their breeding program. But I think at a minimum, we can improve rates by about 20%.
That's a real return for the livestock owner.
Thank you. Yes, that's the goal. We're really trying
You're
to
welcome.
help the producer. Yeah.
Now, and you're doing this in both beef and dairy?
Yes, we haven't really seen huge differences in any breed of cattle. So yeah, it works great for beef and dairy.
Interesting as, you go to different livestock meetings and you hear where we are going in this whole genetic space to not only, achieve different outcomes from a genetic standpoint, but our ability to deliver on that is, the process of getting to that outcome. And this is exactly where you fit. Do you feel that, if when we're 5 years from now and we look back to where we are today, this technology just gets better, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, data is power. So the ability to collect more and more videos of these embryos gives us more data to train the models. So it just gets better. And right now, we're actually working on training machine learning models to predict embryo sex. So that's another feature we can look at. And then as this gets used more and more, potentially we can use machine learning to assess genetic traits or chromosomal abnormalities or likelihood of abortion or miscarriage. And so, yeah, I think we've only reached the tip of the iceberg of what is possible with technology such as this. And then, of course, collaborating with other ag technologies that we can really get a compounding and layering effect.
Case, where do you see some of those collaborations? Like, can you just, even if you just make up an example, like what are some of the bolt-ons or some of the synergies that you see in the ag tech space?
I know that there's some work done looking at the recipient female. So our technology, it's only evaluating the embryo. And if we put a great embryo into a recipient animal that's compromised, we're still not going to get a pregnancy. So we need healthy recipients and healthy embryos. So I think a great natural complement would be technologies such as Doppler ultrasound or hormone assays to make sure that the female animals that we're putting these embryos into have a good chance of carrying that embryo to term as well.
We were not too long ago, were we not making a lot of these decisions based on just the visual aspect of the animal and also maybe some past history of some of the births, like just we had a very small sample size of that, of course. Like, no wonder we had so much hit and miss, so to speak.
Totally. And I mean, that's really how it's been done today, is there's not a lot of like objective data going into these breeding management decisions. And it's really been based on the experience of the veterinarian or the embryologist or whatever technician is doing this work. And so, I mean, it's not a bad thing that got the industry where it is today. I just think there's a lot of opportunity to still move that needle.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious as to, in your ideal outcome or like, what does this look like? Where could this potentially take us? This kind of technology and some of the work that you've been in your research, but not only product development.
You know, I would really like to get to a point where using IVF to impregnate animals is going to get you a live calf on nearly every single breeding attempt. And when we do that, I believe it drives down the cost. So when I talk to beef and dairy producers, for the ones that aren't using IVF or embryo transfer, if I ask them why, they say it's too expensive or that pregnancy rates are too low. So if we can address those two problems, I think it democratizes IVF for everybody, and every producer can accelerate their genetics faster and affordably because the results will be consistent.
Is this technology right now you're working in cattle? Does it transfer or does it work parallel in potentially like equine or pork or sheep or just yeah? Can you talk about is it similar or just way too different?
I believe that it can. So, our technology, it works in sort of two phases. The first phase is not actually machine learning, it's just quantifying the activity in the embryos. And then the second phase is applying machine learning to those activity patterns. So I don't need a lot of data to do the first phase, which is just quantifying the activity. And I've seen that in almost every species that we've worked with to date, that embryos that make pregnancies have average moderate activity, and the fast and slow embryos on the extreme ends of that bell-shaped curve do not make pregnancies. So that pattern has repeated in horses, sheep, goats, and even in human embryos. What I don't have in these other species is large enough data sets to train machine learning models. And so we're actively looking for new partners who work with equine or small ruminant embryo transfer to help get us these data so we can apply machine learning to that. So while we might not necessarily have proven it, I do think it's very translational, and that with enough time and data, we can create models for multiple species.
Yeah, with all of the work that's being done right now and something like beef on dairy, this technology is like extremely well timed. And I see you nodding. Is my perception is correct?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the beef and dairy potential. I mean, high genomics will always be a potential, but our technology really only works if people are willing to use the data to discard embryos. And in the high genomic scenario, if that potential calf is worth tens of thousands of dollars, even if it has a low chance of making a pregnancy, I think a lot of people will go ahead and transfer it. But the opposite business model is with the beef on dairy. These beef embryos are produced very cost effectively, and the goal is to get those dairy cows pregnant, right? And so people aren't going to take a chance on a beef embryo that has a low chance of pregnancy for this beef and dairy purpose. So I actually think the bigger opportunity for this technology to really make an impact is in that model exactly, because people's willingness to discard embryos for improved pregnancy outcomes is much higher and more eager to do so.
Very cool. We've been talking to Dr. Cara Wells. Her company is Emgenisys. If somebody wants, this is very cool. How do people find out more if they want to get a hold of you if they're in this space?
Yeah, we're pretty active on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and then of course we have a website. There's a contact form that goes directly to my email, or you can email me directly at cara@emgenisys.com.
Cool stuff. Dr. Wells, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.